Good evening, boys and girls. Welcome back for Expeditions. Tonight, we're going to talk about a story about the disciples and how they went on a trip in a boat. I think Peter was getting ready to go for a boat ride. Oh, yeah, Peter's ready. Peter's ready for his boat ride. Peter, this boat ride we're going to talk about, though, there's going to be a storm, and it's going to get scary. What do you think about that, Peter? He has his life jacket. Peter is ready to go with his life jacket. Well, the word that Pastor Josh is going to teach you about tonight, boys and girls, is the word peace. God brings peace, even in the storms.
All right, welcome to Expeditions tonight. Our verse we're going to look at tonight is found in the book of Isaiah. It is Isaiah 26:3, thou wilt keep him in perfect peace, whose mind is stayed on thee. God promises us peace. Now, peace is the absence of fear, or what we do, the opposite of fear. Okay, when I'm terrified or freaked out or concerned, that's the opposite of peace. We're going to look at tonight, as they just mentioned, a story in the New Testament when Jesus' disciples needed peace. I don't know about you, but there's certain things that scare me. Certain things that make me terrified. Now, this one's going to shock you, I promise. Okay, Pastor Josh I know he's extremely tall, but tall things scare me. I hate being up on high things, especially like if it's something suspended by one wire, like a ski lift or something like that. I don't like being up high, suspended by one wire. It's something that scares me. All right, I know. I love Cedar Point. I can go on any ride at Cedar Point, but there's two rides. One of them is called the Sky Ride, which takes you on a gondola with a wire. The other is the Ferris wheel. Those are the two rides at Cedar Point that I will not ride. Okay, there's just certain things that scare me. However, in life, there's been different times, different events, different things that have made me terrified. I can remember when I was really young, we had in my grandparents' backyard, we lived in an apartment building right next to their house, and they had a giant pool. Now, it was hot this week. Swimming in a pool when it's hot is awesome, and I loved going swimming when I was a kid, but there was one time I can remember. I was swimming, and I don't even know how, I don't know exactly what happened, but I got stuck. I don't know if I got caught on something at the bottom of the pool or what, but I couldn't get to the surface of the pool. And my cousin, I don't even remember if she remembers this, but my cousin jumped in and saved me. I was terrified. I was scared. There's a time when I was older, I was playing basketball at the gym in my school. My mom was there. She was a teacher. She was working late that night, and I was there with her. And so what else do you do when you're a staff kid but play basketball in the gym? And I was there, and I was the only one in the gym. It was great. It was awesome. It was fun. I'd done that all the time. However, on this night, while I was shooting baskets, facing the basketball hoop this way, behind me, a door that was kind of blocked. You couldn't see the doorway from the gym, but it opened up into the gym, but there was lockers and things that blocked the view. A door swung wide open. And I'm standing there, probably about 10, 11 years old, and I turn around as fast as I can to look and see, and I don't see anything, but my mind begins to race really quickly because there's a problem. I'm only about 10. I can't really fight off anyone that well. So as soon as I see that turned and I don't see anything, I book it to the front of the church building where the school was at to get to my mom's classroom. Why? Because I felt at peace when I was with an adult. Maybe you guys have been in a scary situation before. Okay, that scary nighttime in your room, okay, and you have the monsters under your bed or something's making noise in the closet. Okay, what do? You run to mom and dad. You jump in their bed. You snuggle in between them. And they say, what now? And kick you out of bed, okay? And we run to where we feel safe. Maybe you're like me when you were a kid and you liked when you went to the mall, okay? And hopefully one day we'll be able to go to those again. But go to the mall and I would hide in the racks of clothing. They'd be all around me. And I'd try to scare people. Problem is, it kind of got scary when I would peek out and mom was no longer right next to me. She'd moved on, okay? I felt safe and secure when I was with someone that I trusted. But when I was alone, when I was out of the control, I was afraid. We're going to see the same thing is true in our story from the Gospels. This event is a real event. It happened during the time that Jesus was here on this earth, and it is recorded in the Gospel of Mark and in the Gospel of Luke. The disciples had just witnessed Jesus perform many miracles. And he was able to do amazing things. Okay, he was able to feed people. He was able to heal people. He'd even raise people from the dead. That's an amazing thing. I love watching magicians. I think that'd be cool. But to see Jesus Christ perform actual miracles must have been amazing. So Jesus tells the disciples, hey, we need to go to the other side of the lake, of the Sea of Galilee. So they get in a boat and they begin to sail across the Sea of Galilee. Jesus has been working and doing all of this. So you know what Jesus does? Kind of like what a lot of us do if we've worked a long day. We go and we take a nap. Jesus Christ went to the front of the boat and he was sleeping. The disciples, most of them, not all of them, but many of them were trained fishermen. They grew up on the Sea of Galilee. They grew up fishing these waters. But as they were sailing, a storm began to arise. The winds began to blow. The boat began to rock. Now, I have never been in a boat that I thought was going to sink. I've been out to sea many times. I've been in lakes and things, and I've never actually been afraid of drowning from a boat. Never been afraid of a boat capsizing. All right, thankfully, every boat I've been on has been pretty solid. I was on a plane once, flying, and we were trying to land during the middle of a storm, and we had what was called turbulence, and the plane was kind of shaking as we tried to land. Now, that was a bit scary. Okay, once again, I wasn't in control. I was sitting, and I had to trust that the pilot knew what he was doing. I remember when I was little, my parents took us canoeing. Now, I like canoeing. I think it's fun. I like kayaking. I like all sports on the water. And they took us canoeing. My sister and I, my mom and my dad, the four of us, we went canoeing. Now, I think it might have been more terrifying for my parents than it was for me to take a 5-year-old little boy who was full of energy and couldn't sit still and put him in the middle of a canoe. If you've ever been in a canoe before, they are extremely tipsy. So my parents made me a deal. If I could sit still the entire trip down the river. Now that's a miracle in itself. That may rival some of the miracles that happen in the Bible. If I could sit still for about a 2 to 3 hour canoe ride all the way down the river. But they knew how to get me. They promised me that if I sat still the entire way, because they didn't want the canoe tipping, they didn't want to fall in the water. They don't like water as much as I do. They promised me an ice cream cone. So guess what? If there's an ice cream cone on the line, even today, if there's an ice cream cone on the line, I can do almost anything. All right, I sat still the entire time because I didn't want to rock the boat. I didn't want to tip us over. Well, the disciples with Jesus were in a much scarier situation. They weren't going down a river. If they fall out, they've got life jackets on and they float to the side of the river and they get out. It's just fine. No, they're in the middle of the Sea of Galilee. No life preservers, no extra lifeboats. If their boat sinks, they are goners. They're not going to make it. They can't swim that well to get to shore. But these disciples, they're trained fishermen. They're used to storms. The problem was as this storm got bigger and bigger and the waves began crashing against the side of the boat, the waves began to come up into the boat. And the Bible tells us that the boat began to be filled with water. Now, I think you guys are pretty smart. You know that the water is supposed to stay outside the boat. When you have a boat that gets water inside of it, you have a major problem. So the disciples are doing everything they can, but now that they realize that they're not in control, they're not the mighty fishermen who are able to sail through the sea. Once they realize that and they think that they're about to sink, they panic. But where's Jesus in all of this? The Bible tells us that Jesus, he was sleeping in the front of the boat. The disciples go and they shake him, they wake him up. They say, Jesus, don't you care that we're going to perish? Okay, and I'm not there. I don't know exactly what it's like, but I can almost imagine Jesus like wiping the sleep from his eyes and yawning and stretching, because he's a human just like we are. And Jesus looks at him and says, "Oh, ye of little faith." He says, "Really, guys? Have you not seen what I've been able to do?" And he gets up from the boat. He stands up and he says, "Peace, be still." The Bible tells us that immediately, the storm was gone. The water was smooth. The wind was no longer blowing as hard. It was still blowing enough to move them across in the sailboat, but the storm was over. Jesus had calmed the storm. The disciples are sitting there terrified now. Not of a storm, but terrified of the person who calmed the storm. They had never seen so much power on display. They said, who can control nature, the wind, the water, the waves? Who can control that with just their voice? They were amazed at who Jesus Christ is. And that's because Jesus Christ is God. And they realized, at least for a short time, that they were in the presence of God. You know what? After that, they weren't scared of the storm, because they knew that God was in the boat with them. Sometimes we go through scary events. We go through scary circumstances. Sometimes you go through scary things at school. Maybe a scary situation happens in your family. Someone you know, a grandma, a grandpa gets sick. Maybe mom or dad loses a job. And you don't understand, why is this happening? You move and you have to go to a new school and you don't know anyone there. When we get scared, we need to remember that our God gives us, the Bible, which we looked at the beginning, thou wilt keep him in perfect peace whose mind is stayed, focused. That's what stayed means. Like if you're standing, you're staying somewhere, it's grounded. Whose mind is stayed on thee. The disciples had to remember, and we have to remember, three things. First of all, that God knows. Jesus knew the storm was going on. Sure, he was sleeping, but he knew before they even got in the boat that storm was coming. The trials, the struggles, this COVID-19 that we're in the midst of, God knew ahead of time that this was coming, and he still knows. It didn't surprise him. We need to remind ourselves, if we're going to have perfect peace, when our mind is stayed, focused on God, we need to remember that God knows. We need to remember that God is in control. The disciples had to remember that Jesus Christ wasn't just powerful enough to feed 5,000 people. He wasn't just powerful enough to raise the dead. Jesus Christ is powerful enough to calm the storm. Jesus Christ is powerful enough to calm the storm in your life. What did the disciples have to do, though? They had to go and talk to him. They had to go and meet with Jesus. They had to say, hey, get up, help. Well, we do the same thing. In our lives, we do it by prayer. God, I don't understand what's going on. God, I don't understand why these circumstances are happening, but Lord, I trust you. So you need to remember three things. God knows. God is in control. But most importantly, God is there. Jesus was in the boat. God was in the boat with them. Earlier with the illustrations, when we get scared, what do? We run to mom and dad. Why? Because we find that there's peace in them. You might be walking down the street and there's a big scary dog in the yard. But if you're holding on to dad's hand, doesn't matter. Dad's not going to let the big dog get you. The same thing is true in our lives. Our God is with us. We have to remember that. Because if our mind, God promises, if our mind is stayed on him, no matter the situation, no matter the struggle, no matter the thing that we're afraid of, our God is there. And He will keep us in perfect peace.